Hi, I'm Bruno Aziza. Now, according to Business Insider, 79% of you are planning on adopting social media, yet only 12% of you know how to use it effectively. So I'm here today in sunny California to meet with Robert Scoble. He's the reference in the industry. He's going to tell you how he uses social media and how you can use it effectively too. That's what's next on BITV.
Am I causing an interesting conversation about the business? How do you cause that conversation to happen? That's not an ROI question, that's a deeper human question.
Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Hey.
You are my inspiration. You are the concept that we went after when we started BITV. You started Channel 9 at Microsoft. You started FastCompany.tv. So we're very happy to meet with you, and thank you again for your time.
Thanks.
Today we're going to talk about social media in particular, and I want to get started on video blogging because you have democratized this concept. So do you mind explaining to our audience what video blogging is in the first place?
Well, I discovered that at Microsoft. I was sitting at lunch with a cool engineer who built what now is Silverlight, and he was showing it to me. And I was like, "Man, this is so cool! Why can't I just film this and put this out?" You know, and that turned into Channel 9. We buying a $250 cheap camera and going into people's offices and asking them, "What are you working on? And who are you?"
And so if you're not familiar with Channel 9, this is a show that we have for developers, and it's extremely popular. Yeah. But the concept of connecting with the audience and sharing a message at scale is something that you could also apply for your company externally as well as internally. So for some of the C executives here looking at our show, tell us where you get started. How do you do this?
Well, first I would just start watching the landscape and understand, get on Twitter, get on Facebook, get on YouTube, and start following some channels that you like, you know, and just do some clicking around. You know, I follow, I think, 200 people on YouTube who put out really interesting tech content, right? And you can easily click on each of those channels and see what they do and see, do you like it? Do you hate it? You know, does it resonate with you? Does it look interesting? Does the look interesting? And then once you find something that you like, it's easy to duplicate it because you can hire a video crew and say, duplicate this, right? I want to look like Leo Laporte, or I want to look like Chris Pirillo, or I want to look like Robert Scoble and do what he's doing, and I want to do something similar. And it's pretty cheap still. I'm not, you know, a really high-end camera is $4,000, right? Yeah. Then that's a high-end one. The ones I'm using are less than $1,000 right now. And lights, we were just talking about lights. You know, you can get my lighting kit's $350. It's not really expensive anymore to build a TV studio and do this. You can get crazy, you know, if you want to do the Oprah show. But even her, she doesn't have that much in cameras anymore. These cameras are low cost and very, very high quality. And then just start doing it, you know, set yourself a goal. I'm going to do a video every day, and I'm going to interview somebody else, or I'm going to tell my company what's going on. I'm going to give them a little tip, or whatever the shtick is that you're going to try to build a brand around.
Yeah, and so you use often examples of companies that have almost changed the culture. You think about Comcast, you think about Ford. You know, what did they do? Did they isolate particular talent inside their company, or did they just start shooting and then whatever comes?
There's two ways, right? One is to do a company really well for the social world, and that's the Zappos model, where they hired, even the janitor has to tweet, right? Everybody during training has to get on Twitter and has to tweet because they want to empower people to speak for the brand, no matter where in the company they're working. And they want to hire people who are capable of that, right? Because sales are made at 2 in the morning on a Saturday, right? Yeah. And you know, if somebody's helping somebody else, great. That helps the brand scale. That's the best way, right? But that takes building a good culture, hiring great people, you know, and building a culture of you're going to talk to the customer and you're going to be always on the front line and you're always going to write as if you were going to be on the front page of the New York Times or do a video or whatnot. And you're always going to be proud of that. And not everybody is, right? We've seen lots of examples where people are, you know, drunk on a Saturday and they start on Twitter and...
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea, you know? Although I've done that a few times and gotten away with it. But you know, if you do that knowing the consequences, that's one thing. If you do that not knowing the consequences, that's a whole nother thing. It causes a lot of problems. So that's one way. Build a company that has that culture and has media training and has social media training and has nice people. I mean, really what Zappos does is hire nice people and they filter out assholes, right? One of the books back here is the No Asshole Rule, written by a Stanford professor. And he shows Bob Sutton, yeah. And he shows how acidic somebody with that kind of personality is on the company. And Zappos has built a filtering system to get rid of those people. Yeah. And that's one way to build a company. So now if you have
before we go to the second model, in that model, what do I need to do? Do I need not just to enforce for people to communicate and be outgoing, I'd say, or do I say, well, one day out of the week you're going to be doing this, or how do I help them plan for that?
In Zappos' case, they say 24 hours. You're 24 hours a day. You're a brand ambassador. It's
up to you.
If you get on Twitter, you are representing the brand. You're representing all your coworkers to the public. That's how I dealt with it at Microsoft.
Yeah.
I always knew that I was representing 60 or 70,000 people out in the public, and that kept me out of trouble. And I took some risks. I spoke out against my boss. I spoke out against Steve Ballmer one time. I took a lot of risks, but I did it knowing the consequences. Yeah. And if you have a culture that is cool with that, that's great. That's the best way, because then you get a really innovative culture and you build relationships with customers and people, suppliers, supply chains. And you build a new kind of company, right? And that's where you're seeing all sorts of new startups that are like Zendesk or Spigot, which are aiming at helping companies work with their customers and work with the world in a new way and be innovative and collaborative. And that's the new world. That's the world of the Zapposes.
Yeah. So that's the first way to do it, which is
that's the best way, right? But not everybody can do that, right? If you're running a federal government, you can't just change your hiring policies tonight and decide to hire only people who are good on Twitter. Yeah. And so if you're stuck with a Procter & Gamble, a General Motors, a government agency, then I would say develop a team. Develop a team that you can identify people who are outgoing, nice, would be good brand ambassadors or good company ambassadors or good government ambassadors, and that are into this, show some, you can see when people are into this, right? They're posting on Facebook, they're putting up little YouTube videos, or they're blogging. You can identify those people pretty easily, and then you build a team around people who are like that, and it's basically a PR team.
So when I think about these two models, I think the other message here too is for a CEO. Sometimes they don't want to do it because they think it has to be perfect. But part of the message here is because you're going to be human, you're not going to be over editing, or the show doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be authentic. That's really one of your strengths.
And I would say fast, because business has failure. There is no perfect business. Sometimes crap happens in business. Customers get pissed off, a pipeline bursts, and all of a sudden you have a crisis, or your product is defective and needs to be recalled. And there's these cases, right? Yeah. And I would build my team for those cases. I remember being at Microsoft, and we were running a big conference, the PDC. Yep. And we had 10,000 or 7,000 people coming into town, and there was fires all over. And the fires closed down the air traffic control in Southern California. So Bill Gates couldn't even get his private jet down there, right? So, and there were customers, locked up around the world at airports trying to figure out how to get to the PDC. So we started a war room instantly, right? And we use these tools to communicate out and sort of have fun with everybody. Yep. And people said that was so cool. Having one room where everybody, one guy was calling Bill Gates' jet and trying to figure out how to get it there, and he was getting more information than United Airlines was giving us, right? Yeah. Because we had a pilot who was, studying all the air traffic controller talk, right? And so we had more information than people in London were having standing in front of the gate, right?
But being able to react so fast and having a system for that. So now, you can use either situations here, but often when you start social media blogging or video blogging or even Twitter or Facebook pages, you want to justify the value of why you're doing it. And how do you measure the quality of your work? I know we talked a little bit about the tool that we're going to release, the Twitter Analytics tool, but how do you look at it? Is it quantity? Is it quality? Is it both? Do you have specific tools you would point people to?
My favorite comment to that is Gary Vaynerchuk, who runs a big wine store, sells $70 million in wine a year, says, "What's the ROI of your mother?" And in other words, there's some things that why is your first inclination ask, am I going to make $1 with this? Well, you have PR teams, they don't have ROI really. I mean, they do eventually. They get you in the paper and you study. At Microsoft, I tried not to look at the stats. I tried to say, am I causing an interesting conversation about the business? And guess what? The stats come out of that. The sales come out of that. If everybody's all of a sudden talking about your product and standing in line in front of stores, you're gonna see the sales. But the trick is, how do you cause that conversation to happen? And that's not an ROI question. That's a deeper human question. How do we get people to talk?
It's a longer cultural-driven type of change rather than just looking at.
Now you can,
you can of course measure it, but you shouldn't focus on.
Absolutely, you can measure. You can look at how many people are retweeting you, how many people are clicking on you, how many people are commenting, how many people are taking something and sticking it in a blog post. You can measure all that, right? And you should have some goals, like you want to see that stuff going up, not going down. But that stuff does affect sales if it's done in the right way. If you're just doing it to say, oh, look at my pretty cat photos, you might get hits, but you won't get the sales, right? It's not driving people toward an action. So I always did stuff to try to drive people to an action, even though it didn't look apparent on first look.
Sure, but first you've got to build a credibility, change the culture of your company, be approachable and more human, and then other things will come with it.
This came out of visiting Napa, right? And going to a wine. I wanted to go wine tasting, and the first winery I got to, I said, I know you live here. Tell me where else to go. What's the best wineries? Because I know you know. And the first person I asked wouldn't answer the question because she didn't feel empowered. She wasn't the Zappos employee, right? She was like, oh, I don't know if I can really answer that question. So she went and got her boss, and her boss did answer it. And it was a great day. He laid out a whole map, said, go to this place, go to this place, go to this place. And then I came back and bought a case of wine from him. And that's the key, is you got to be credible and authoritative on your market. You got to exhibit that you understand the marketplace, right? That's why I love talking, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I ask them, who's your competition? Because they know who their competition is. And if they don't, why are you in business if you don't know the competitive landscape and how you're going to,
and there's always competition.
Get a crack.
There's always competition. I mean, sometimes companies that say we don't have any competition, which is
then I'm worried when I actually do meet companies that don't have any competition. Either they're forging a ground in a space that we don't know, like Google is building a self-driving car, which even that has competition, right? It's called a human driving a car. At Microsoft, we used to say the biggest competition of Windows is Windows, right? The old version of Windows.
There's always an option. There's always an option.
You can stay with what you got. And that's the biggest competition for Microsoft, even if you're a monopoly and don't have much competition. You still have yourself. And so, I love talking about that stuff. And that's what I would do with a media team is, how do we demonstrate that we're credible in the marketplace, that we should be listened to because we understand it, and that we're nice, and that we have the best service, or whatever the differentiating factor is, drive that home every day,
I want to go back to something you said earlier, because many people might not be aware of the show that you run. You talk to 2-3 companies on average every day, so you publish a lot of videos. And when you think about the era of data, maybe the era of social media, what are some of the great trends that you're seeing? I mean, you've seen so many companies, I'm sure it's probably difficult, but if
in every category, there's a lot of disruption going on. Mobile, obviously. I mean, how many people are buying smartphones this year? Many more than bought them a year ago, so... That's happening. Tablet computers, you know, Apple is leading the way there with the iPad, but Microsoft, I keep hearing, is having a tablet coming out soon. So, you know, you got Microsoft and HP and Google and RIM all trying to get into the tablet world that Apple really has nailed. Apple actually, all they did was copy Microsoft, right? Microsoft's had, I sold tablets for years at Microsoft. I was a tablet evangelist, working at NEC, and we had a 1/4-inch thin tablet that looks like the iPad. It was just, the battery lasted 2 hours, and it was $2,000, you know? And so Steve Jobs just saw that and said, there might be a market there if we do it a little bit better. And sure enough, he opened up one. Home, I mean, the reason I got this big HD TV in my room, and soon it'll be on the wall, is there's a lot happening with digital and TV. We're now seeing, you know, the Xbox with the Kinect, you know, all sorts of different boxes, Boxy Box, Roku, Apple TV, Google TV. Everybody's trying to figure out how do we own that home experience of sitting on the couch at home and flipping through a new kind of TV, not just the old Comcast.
Yeah, and there's the complexity of multiple devices, the PC, the device, the mobile device, the tablet, and the TV. Yeah. There's a lot more you have on your show, so where should people go to keep in touch with you and the work that you do?
Well, my professional video show is Building 43, and that's all about the best startups that are coming out. But my blog is usually where I link out to everything, because I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Quora. Quora's a new thing coming out this year. I've answered 500 questions over there. So YouTube, it all starts on my blog, though, Scobleizer.com.
Scobleizer.com. Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Bruno Ziza.